Mastering English in billiards. In billiards, English refers to the side spin applied to the cue ball, affecting its trajectory and path. Mastering English requires understanding two distinct types of spin. Vertical or top spin, draw spin, controls the cue ball's speed and direction after hitting the object ball. Top spin makes the cue ball roll forward after contact. Draw makes the cue ball roll backward after contact. Determine the amount of topspin or draw needed for the desired cue ball path after hitting the object ball. Horizontal spin or side spin controls the cue ball's path after it hits a rail. Determine the amount of side spin needed for the desired cue ball path after hitting the rails. The key point is separate the spins here. Treat side spin and vertical spin as independent entities. Do not combine or mix their effects during calculations. Analyze and calculate each type of spin separately. Combining spins for aiming. Determine the desired vertical spin for the cue ball's trajectory. Then determine the desired horizontal spin for the cue ball's path after hitting the rails. Combine the two spin values to find the cue tip contact point on the cue ball. To compensate for throw, adjust your aim of the object ball based on the cue ball's overall spin location and its impact on the object ball's path. Remember, think of top draw like forward-backward push after the cue ball hits the object ball. Think of side spin like the direction the cue ball takes after hitting a rail. Calculate each spin separately based on the desired cue ball path. Combine both spins to find the final aiming point of the object ball. Always remember to keep side spin and vertical spin separate. Backhand English involves moving your grip hand from side to side to impart spin on the cue ball. On the flip side, fronthand English is achieved by moving your bridge hand from side to side to impart spin on the cue ball. Now pivot English comes into play when you rotate around the specific point of the cue shaft to add spin. This can be achieved using a combination of fronthand and backhand English or by placing your bridge on the pivot point of the cue for a direct pivot English effect. Pivot English plays a vital role in applying spin when playing pool. Here's how it works. If you align your shot by aiming directly at the ghost ball, and you know the specific pivot point for the shot, rotating your cue shaft around this pivot point will impart the desired English to the cue ball. When applying side spin to the cue ball, it undergoes an initial deflection in the opposite direction of the spin. Subsequently, due to swerve, it gradually curves back through the aim line. If the pivot point was chosen correctly, the cue ball will replace the ghost ball accurately, independent of the amount of applied spin from 0 to 100%. Although the curves in the diagram are exaggerated, they provide a visual representation of the concept. The goal is to select the correct pivot point, ensuring the curving path of the cue ball intersects with the original ghost ball position. Power and distance are the main contributors for determining a cue's pivot point, not the bridge point. In essence, pivot English is about strategically pivoting the cue on the established pivot point of the cue to achieve accurate spin application. If you happen to bridge on the pivot point, you can use 100% backhand English for spin application, ensuring a precise return to the exact contact point of the object ball. Cut-induced throw, as described in this picture. We are aiming the red line to, let's say, a pocket. We are shooting the cue ball straight at the object ball with no side spin. The friction of the cue ball passing across the object ball will push the object ball forward. Hence, instead of traveling down the red aim line, it travels down the blue cut-induced throw line. A quick way to fix for this problem is to simply aim slightly before the pocket so that your aim line, including the cut-induced throw, ends up pushing the object ball forward to the actual aim line you want. So now we will talk about spin-induced throw. When we put side spin on a cue ball, such as right-hand spin in this display, that will cause the face of the cue ball to have a sideways motion. Right-hand spin will have the face of the cue ball moving to the left. When that left motion of the face of the cue ball contacts the object ball in a shot, it will drag the object ball with friction to the left. So the aim line being the red line, the outcome would be the blue spin-induced throw line to the left. To correct for that, we would take our aim line, knowing that we have the spin on the cue ball, and in a right-hand spin, aim to the right of the pocket. The left-hand motion from the spin of the cue ball will push it to the now new blue line down the aim line to the pocket, or the intended line to the pocket. Right-hand spin, right-hand side of the pocket. Left-hand spin, therefore, would be left-hand side of the pocket for correction. There is an amount of spin that can be put on the cue ball, which, when it contacts the object ball, results in spin-induced throw, precisely counteracting cut-induced throw. The outcome will be such that the object ball will travel on the aim line with no throw. To calculate gear in English, in your mind, imagine the object ball aim line through the cue ball. And now we will zoom in on this area. To achieve gear in English, you need a Q-tip to cue ball contact point that is exactly 40% the distance of the cue ball aim line to the object ball aim line. Due to the curvature of the cue ball and Q-tip, this will appear to be 50% of the movement of cue ball aim line to object ball aim line. A distinction between parallel English and what we refer to as pivot English include the spin generated by a given amount of Q-tip movement. Whether considering an equal amount of tips of spin or a percentage of tips of spin, the pivot English system tends to yield slightly more spin compared to parallel spin system. Examining the visuals in our diagrams, observe the angle of attack from the Q-tip to the cue ball in both systems. Notably, the angle of attack is greater with the pivot system, resulting in a slightly increased spin compared to the parallel system for an equivalent tip movement. It's crucial to highlight that when the cue is pivoted, the heightened angle of attack contributes to a greater spin for the same amount of tip movement. When moving vertically up and down the cue ball, the cue generally maintains a relatively level position. As a result, the vertical distortion is minimally influenced by the curvatures of tip and ball. Conversely, side English is notably more affected by pivot English, compressing the rings horizontally by about 10%. Therefore, 90% of pivot tip movement produces the equivalent of 100% of parallel tip movement. So this is the diagram of a cue ball with regards to spinning the cue ball. The red line indicates the miscue limit, which is about 125% of percentage of spins on the cue ball. The green line represents tips of spin. For this chart, we are using half the diameter of a tip of the cue as one tip of English. So there's 3 green lines. Half the tip is 1 tip of spin. The full tip diameter is 2 tips of spin, and a tip and a half, or a diameter of 1.5, is 3 tips of spin. So half the tip is 1 tip of English. The blue lines indicate percent of spin. There's 4 blue lines vertical and 4 blue lines horizontal on either side of center. 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. So the blue lines indicate percent of spin, right? There are 4 blue lines either side of center and top and bottom, above and below center. They represent 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100% of spin. If you go vertical, 25, 50, 75, 100. Below, 25, 50, 75, 100, and so on, both sides. So blue lines indicate percent of spin. Red line indicates miscue limit. Green lines indicate tips of spin, all from center out. Unleash the inner ballerina, mastering pivot English and pool. Forget brute force. Pool isn't just about bashing balls. It's a balletic symphony of cue and sphere, and pivot English is your conductor, orchestrating mesmerizing maneuvers. Don't let the jargon fool you. It's simply a pre-game pep talk for your cue ball. Imagine this. You unleash a right English rocket on the cue ball, expecting it to flee left, but instead it waltzes in a mystifying curve, gracefully pirouetting back to its target. That's the magic of pivot English, taming the deflection and swerve in a breathtaking duet. Meet the maestro, the pivot point. This sweet spot on your cue is the heart of the show. Rest your bridge hand there and voila, squirt and swerve harmonize, sending the cue ball to its destiny, the contact point. Think of it as a balancing act. Right spin pushes left, swerve pulls right, and pivot point finds the perfect middle ground where their forces dance in delicate equilibrium. The dynamic duo, distance and power. But this isn't a static performance. The dance changes with the music. Power tightens the shot cone, shrinking the pivot point closer to the cue tip. Distance stretches it out, giving the cue ball more room to breathe. Don't get lost in the technical notes, though. Practice a few steps, and your instincts will become the rhythm section. Shaft styles, different grooves for different moves. Think of your cue as a dance partner. It comes in two main styles, low deflection and regular deflection. Low deflection shafts, with their smaller shot cone and longer strides, excel at the precise controlled waltz of parallel English. Regular deflection shafts, with their wider beam and quick pivots, shine in the open spaces of pivot English, where sweeping side spins take center stage. The grand finale, practice makes perfect. Pivot English isn't just a flashy trick, it's a potent weapon for any pool player. Here's the cheat sheet to become a maestro. Find the sweet spot, practice locating the pivot point for various shots. Pivot your bridge. If you can bridge at the pivot point, use 100% backhand English to guide the cue tip for the desired spin, keeping your bridge hand rock steady. Witness the waltz. Watch your cue ball gracefully curve toward its target, spinning like a pro. Experiment without fear. Try different distances, speeds, and spins. You'll be a pivot English ninja in no time. Remember, pool mastery takes dedication. But with this guide and a little practice, you'll be sending cue balls on mesmerizing journeys, leaving your opponents speechless. P.S. Want to delve deeper? Explore different shaft types and how they influence the pivot point. It's a whole new world of pool knowledge waiting to be discovered. Let's simplify the key steps. Identify the necessary spin on the cue ball for trajectory control, top draw or stun, and effective rail performance, considering side spin. Determine the amount of throw, adjusting the aim angle accordingly, and find the pivot point that enables the cue ball to replace the ghost ball. Aim towards the compensated aim point with proper cue shaft bridge and stroke alignment, aligning them along the path leading straight to the ghost ball. Pivot the cue on the required pivot point to achieve the desired English. Execute a straight stroke through the cue ball on the new pivoted stroke line. For considerations on throw, if using less than Garen English, compensate by overcutting the ball. If using more than Garen English, compensate by hitting the ball fat. With Garen English, aim directly at the pocket. Note, amounts of throw will be discussed in subsequent videos, with the hint that more friction increases throw. Considerations on pivot point. Slower shot speed requires a longer pivot point. Increased distance from cue ball to object ball requires a longer pivot point. More topspin requires a longer pivot point. A level cue requires a longer pivot point. Low deflection cues require a longer pivot point. Conversely, faster shot speed requires a shorter pivot point. Reduced distance from cue ball to object ball requires a shorter pivot point. More draw requires a shorter pivot point. A steeper downward slope of the cue angle requires a shorter pivot point. Regular deflection cues require a shorter pivot point. In summary, determine the spin, determine the compensated aim point, determine the pivot point, aim, pivot, and stroke.